Hi, this is On the Scene with Carissa Des, and I'm here with my special guest.
Dr. Shaina Maxey Pomerantz.
And we are here at The Thesis, here at the Lollipop shop, new location. The Thesis is back. And we're talking politics. We're talking government today. Different than, just talking with artists. But yeah, so what are you doing now? What is your title? Like, what do you do in government?
My day job is Executive Director of Race Talks, Uniting to Break the Chains of Racism. We are in our 14th year. And so we are a community-based educational organization. We, for the past, we're on hiatus right now, and we'll recommence in June, excuse me. But since 2011, we've been convening monthly community conversations, panels, movies that are followed by breakout facilitated conversations for a community to really break down and digest with folks. What have you just heard? What have you learned? How are you personally impacted? And so we've been doing this at Kennedy McMinimans in the gym, second Tuesday of each month for the past going on. We're now in our 14th year.
Wow, that's awesome. What have been some of the panels the discussions that you've done in the past? You mentioned a couple, but what were some of the more recent
it's interesting. You know, we talk about everything contemporary through a historical and contemporary lens. So you know, we could talk about people of color in the outdoors. You know, we live in Oregon. We have lots of green trees, hiking trails. How safe do folks of color feel going out in the great outdoors?
I don't feel safe. I'll just say that.
I typically
I watch a lot
either.
of like true crime stories and
talking about folks of color who are either doing the work, you know, creating spaces where Black and brown folks can feel more comfortable. And we have quite a few, you know, based in Portland and throughout the state, which is amazing. And so I'm definitely tapping into more outdoor activities. So that's one particular panel. We have an ongoing panel that's actually going to come up in June to kick off our end our hiatus. And so it's our third annual History of Black Drag in Portland. So it's an intersection of both Juneteenth and what was Pride Month for Portland. Pride is now in July, but it's still a really great opportunity to highlight the contributions of our Black drag queens. You know, Marsha P. Johnson kicked off the legacy work in civil rights. And so, you know, really paying homage to who are our you know, civil rights activists and icons here in our community. So it's hosted by Poison Waters as well as LaWanda Jackson. And we have an amazing panel. So it's really unique from a drag show where we talk about what are the contemporary issues? How did you become a drag queen? What has life been like for you as a Black person intersecting with either sexual identity, orientation? What is it like living in Portland? How are these
it's already
changing?
hard enough being part of the LGBTQ plus community and then also being a Black or brown person. You have that extra.
Or having disability or having, you know, it's so complex. And so religion, you know, there's so many things that can add to the layers. And so to be able to engage this conversation, I didn't know there were bio queens, you know?
I don't even know what that is. What's
trans women queens. We have
Bio queen?
Bio queen. So born a woman.
Oh, okay.
Drag. We have.
See, I'm learning already.
Right. Me too. This is why we do this. And we have drag kings. And so, you know.
I actually might want to get on that bio queen thing because I feel like a drag queen when I go out. Like I like to, like when I'm at home, I'm just wearing sweatpants. But when I go out, I like to like dress up and wear makeup and do my hair and stuff.
Well,
so
come in June. I've
maybe you'll see me
extended
out
the
there.
invitation. Come on and see how you can get into it. Because I think now the interesting thing is that I think especially with Black women in drag, creating the spaces and opportunities for performance, right? So lighter skin counterparts, white counterparts, you know, obviously there's a lot of controversy around drag. You know, nationally, and a lot of laws that are, you know, being created to prevent drag from happening, also lumping it inappropriately with pedophilia. And so our hope is to expand education and awareness, especially about our drag communities here. It's really amazing when families, it's open to all ages. Our programming is always open to all ages. And so to have young people come and feel like they can engage in our conversations. So we talk about everything, politics, education, policing, you know, how to learn how government works. We have a program called Engaging Democracy. We bring in BIPOC staffers who support the elected officials and work in the various branches of government to talk about how does this thing work? How do you, if you have a problem, where do you start? You know?
Yeah.
And we did that because I've been a staffer in the legislature, and the perception of the public is, I got to talk to my elected. I got to tell them what the problem is. But the reality is, it's actually the staffers who end up doing the research.
Yeah. Because
there's so much information that an elected official has to know. They have to have a support team. And so they really rely on that support team to help dig into the issues and really guide them through their committee work and their processes when they're recommending legislation and advocating for it. So it's these are also jobs that otherwise people might not know. Hey,
I had no idea.
It's a whole thing. So we've been doing that for the past 5 years annually as well. And so, honestly, if people in community come to us and say, hey, I got a great topic for race talks. Will you bring me in? And it's like, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's explore it. So the work you're doing, you know, how media is shifting, how we are engaging through social media.
And I want to talk with you a little bit about you're running for Attorney General.
I am.
Right. And then we're voting on the May 21st.
May 21st is the primary. Okay. So I made my announcement here at Thesis, and but let folks know.
Oh, that was the first announcement?
That was no, not my first announcement, but I made an announcement.
An announcement, yeah. Okay.
Technically, I haven't had a launch party, so I'm learning so much about running for office. It should be a course unto itself, really. Folks are like, do you have a campaign manager? Do you have a strategist? Do you have money? Do you have this? Do you have that? And so I think when we talk about, engaging the general public into the political process, I think if you don't have an entry point, it's really difficult. And even with my exposure through the work that I do with Race Talks and engaging with various political and government offices, even having worked as a chief of staff for a legislator in the Oregon legislature, working in the Texas and Louisiana legislatures, it's completely different when you're working as a staff person after they've been elected versus campaigning and trying to get the word out.
Why did you decide to run?
Great question. I have worked in 2020. I was working as a civil rights investigator for the Bureau of Labor and Industry, which is the office that Oregonians contact when they've experienced any kind of discrimination. They need to report wage discrepancies, anything around employment, housing, public accommodations. I was hired the week before George Floyd was murdered. And so my dream job, while all hell is breaking loose in Portland and the world, because
literally the world was just like exploding
in the pandemic. And it was my dream job. I was hired by a Black woman who had been a civil rights attorney for 20 plus years. I was hired with several other folks of color coming into Boley. And similar to a lot of jobs that I've had in Oregon specifically, when you are a person of color stepping into a role where you don't have a lot of people that look like you, and specifically me being the Black woman, I was the second Black woman. My boss, Carol Johnson, was the other Black woman in that role. Folks kind of say, hey, look out there, this might be really difficult. And, but I felt like, I was going to be taught well, guided well through the process. And so we got in there, and it was a hostile environment, and there was a lot of issues. And ultimately it culminated in her leaving. She had a box of feces sent to her unlisted home, which in the middle of a pandemic in 2020 is extremely scary. You
can't really go anywhere. Like, where are you going to go?
And how do people know where you live if you have an unlisted address? And so she left, and I was there with my other Black colleagues, and I had filled out a survey saying, hey, this is not right. What I'm seeing, what's happening here needs to be dealt with. And I had a chance to talk to the commissioner at the time, and unfortunately, I was still on work probation. And some people say, you did all that while you were still on probation with the job. But my feeling is I was looking for a job when I got that one. So if it doesn't work out, I'm going to keep being me and keep going, keep speaking truth to power and being courageous. And so it felt like the right thing to do, to say, hey, there are these problems, but I'm here committed to this work. And unfortunately, my probation came up and they said, well, we're going to extend your probation another 6 months, which is 6 months is the standard for the state. And I said, okay, in a 25, 30 year work history. I'm 48. I've been working since I was a kid.
You said that earlier, but I'm still trying to believe that.
Don't believe it. Good, clean living, right? Good genes, lots of butters on the face. And so, I said, okay, well, as someone who has done organizational consulting and has 2 degrees in it, my question is, so how do you see me improving this next go around? Well, you need more education and training. Okay, well, aside from the education and training that I've gotten in the role so far, what additional education and training will you be able to provide me? We won't be able to provide you anything beyond what we've already provided you.
How does that make sense? Make that make sense.
So that means we will be back in the same position that I'm in right now in 6 months, because without some sort of help, and I am the kind of person who I advocate for the things I need in a job. So if I don't understand something, I'm reaching out to colleagues, I'm reaching out to people to get educated. How do I do this better? How do I, I'm very proactive. And so even with doing all of that and all hell breaking loose around us, it was a very stressful time, to say the least. And I did not see that it was going to improve. And so I resigned, and I resigned citing my reasons, and felt that it was retaliatory to extend my probation. Yeah. So that ended up going into a lawsuit. My boss, Carol Johnson, filed a lawsuit. I filed a lawsuit also
against the state.
Against the state. And the DOJ, the Attorney General's office, defends the state in litigation that they are in when they are sued or they're initiating lawsuits. And so it was a very adversarial experience. Yeah. And I still walked away feeling like that could have been handled a better way. I mean, I feel like we lost a great advocate for civil rights in Carol Johnson. I feel like Bully lost us both, and we actually have a civil rights office in the AG's office, and we have a hotline where people can report hate crimes, and it's very effective. But I really believe that office can be expanded. And more can be done to support our agencies. Especially, I think you said there are only 5 people in that. Less than 5 people in comparison to the other divisions that have 75 to several hundred attorneys working on this. And so we know, especially if we are to have an administration shift and the Supreme Court and Congress continue to work federally to roll back our civil rights, Oregon has some of the strongest civil rights protections in the state. And so it really comes down to the AG's office, the governor, our legislators, our local officials to help fortify what we have in our state. It's a collective unit. But I will say Ellen Rosenblum, who's the current AG who's retiring, she really did lay a roadmap, because during that previous administration, when these things were happening, she was very effective in filing lawsuits and working to protect Oregonians' civil rights and freedoms. And, we were a sanctuary state when they were trying to do forced deportation. And so looking again to that might very well come back. The reality that they are trying to impact the way we can educate. My work with Race Talks is being banned in other states around the country. And so that is, as somebody who has been a 20-year educator, I look at what's happening in some of these other states and think, if I was still in the classroom teaching high school, I'd be fired and possibly arrested for
the things
teaching
that you
history.
about. Just
just teaching history. And so I think these things are important. I look at there are alternative pathways to litigation and problem solving. And so as somebody who is coming in through the community and working with organizations throughout the state who have boots on the ground, you know, I've worked in rural areas with farmers in Alabama advocating for land rights and air property issues. I've worked in suburban and lived in suburban communities. I've worked in the city, inner city. I was a teacher in the Bronx in New York City.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Grew up in Oakland. My family has been based in Portland, Oregon since the 40s. My mom's born and raised
You guys have been putting in work.
My parents met at Pacific University. You know, I believe that, you know, as challenging as these times are, Oregon has some really amazing things happening here. And, you know, I think we need some fresh ideas. I think we need some new approaches to how we govern and how we also engage the public, we the people around the law. A lot of folks don't know how this office works. So I hope Black women running for office talking about different things will bring some attention to this office. It will not go overlooked in future elections as it has been in the past. And so that's me. That's here.
So what are some changes that you would like to make or that you would like to see happening while you are Attorney General?
So I definitely see working to see how we can expand the Civil Rights Office in the AG's office, creating its own division. And again, the challenge with the AG's office, working to protect the state, we have to be mindful of the people and see where can we prevent litigation? How can the AG's office step in as a resource? And currently, that happens when the agencies invite the AG's office in, or with permission of the governor or the legislature, they can go in and offer support. But if you are sitting around and you hire your attorney and you say, hey, I'm hiring you to look out for my best interests, my liberties, my money, all the things, and I don't contact you because the only way I can contact you to let you know, hey, there's something going on that might impact you negatively, you got to call me first. So if I'm sitting on something or I have awareness, then that means there's a delay.
Yeah.
And there's a missed opportunity to do preventative work versus having to go into crisis management, which looks like a lawsuit, right? Now we're on the defense. Now we have to protect and defend. And so, especially with regards to what I experienced, right? So I think looking at how can we reimagine how this part of the work is done. Yeah,
like putting systems in place so that doesn't even happen in the future.
Right.
So that discrimination.
Could it be prevented? Can and then also looking at, you know, there are issues of wage theft. You know, it's one thing if you have miscommunication and an employer's report it, but when you see widespread abuse, you know, someone said to me, you know, the state of Oregon has a lot of abuses that occur to its employees.
Yeah.
The job of the AG is to defend the state. Is also the job of the AG to protect the people. And so that also has to be reconciled differently. So I think engaging in those conversations and looking at, you know, what are some other models that are taking place in other states that we could either adopt, or if it's not something currently being done anywhere, can we dream big and imagine how this can be done differently?
Yeah, I actually love that. And I prefer that over just doing things the old ways and continuing doing that, because obviously it's not working how it's supposed to be working. Right. So I appreciate the thoughts on expanding where we already are.
Yeah.
So.
And then finally making this office more community-based and consumer-friendly. You know, I've done a lot of advisory work at the city level. And so I don't know how many advisories are available throughout the DOJ or the AG's office. I know a lot of times we hear that law enforcement and elected officials are brought to the table. But what about the community who are also doing the work? How often are they brought to the table to give voice? And so I think that is another element of, you know, bringing the AG's office, the Department of Justice. It's supposed to be the people's attorney.
Right.
Let's bring it back to the people.
Yeah, and like we were talking about a little bit earlier, it's hard to come to the table when you don't even know where the table is.
Yes.
You don't know who's sitting at the table.
Exactly.
So
where's the room?
Yeah.
I don't. I heard there's a table, maybe.
Yeah. So maybe even if you put that out there to the public, like, oh, we would like more of the community to be a part of this. Yeah. They don't know how to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
So putting that knowledge out to the community, I think, could be very helpful.
And as I also said, I identify as a Black woman. And so what I've also observed is anytime a Black woman steps out to do something, there's a lot of people who think I can do that better. Now Black women, we get stuff done. Right. And so I say, good. If you think you can do it better, come on and step out here. Because I think bringing more attention, I look at, Race Talks held one of the first race-focused candidate forums when Joanne Hardesty and Loretta Smith ran for office, because most candidate forums did not talk about race.